Hey, welcome back, subscribers, to my world of stocks, and welcome back to our stock market weekly update series, which I do post every Friday morning. So make sure you are subscribed so you don't miss any future episodes. By the way, I was having some issues with my contact lenses, so I might have to rock the glasses for a little while here. And we got a lot to cover this week. Of course, the market continues to rally on some ceasefire optimism out there. We've got tons of individual stock news to cover too, including Meta's new super AI model that is set to potentially be stronger than even ChatGPT and Google's Gemini. We've got Intel's new deal with Tesla. We have Apple having foldable phone issues, SanDisk stock skyrocketing yet again, and lots more. So it's going to be really interesting to take a look at all of this stuff. Make sure you hit that like button if you are enjoying the series. That lets me know that you guys want me to keep making new episodes for this weekly update series. But thanks again for all of your support, and let's just go ahead and jump straight into it. Okay, so as always, we will start first here with just a quick recap on how the market performed this week. And again, I recorded this on Thursday night, so it might be a little different by the time you watch this on Friday morning. But so far, the market has continued its strong rally from last week, with both the S&P 500 and the Dow Jones rising close to 5% each in the past 5 days, while the tech-heavy Nasdaq saw the largest gains of all, soaring close to 6% too. And again, that strong performance was mostly driven by the potential of peace talks and ceasefires in the Middle East. Now, this is something that unfortunately just kind of keeps going back and forth, so it is hard to get too optimistic, I'd say, about having some real lasting peace in the region when there just continues to be so much chaos and volatility. But as far as today goes here on Thursday, the latest development is that the Israeli prime minister seems to have agreed to open direct negotiations with Lebanon, which was getting bombed even after the proposed ceasefire with Iran. And so the market is now seeing this as, really just some added support for what continues to be a very fragile ceasefire deal that was announced on Tuesday for the next 2 weeks. Now, later in the week, though, President Trump did also come out saying that he is, quote, very optimistic about a permanent peace deal getting done ahead of talks in Pakistan later this weekend. Again, it's a situation, though, that unfortunately just kind of keeps changing almost by the hour. So I can't really spend too much time covering this because by the time you watch this, the reality is that all the information might already be outdated, and I don't want to misinform any of you guys about all the stuff that's going on out there. But when it comes to the economy and the stock market specifically, I just know that most eyes will continue to be glued on the war and how that affects the Strait of Hormuz, which is still the most important shipping route for oil in the entire world, where we would normally see well over 100 different ships passing through every day. But now it's down to I think just the single digits now. It's just kind of crazy. Now, on top of that, though, we also just got one of the Fed's favorite inflation readings this week in the PCE report, Personal Consumption Expenditures. And while it did meet expectations, it still showed that core inflation remains stuck at 3%, which is significantly higher than the Fed's 2% target. In other words, a Fed rate cut is still looking pretty unlikely for the time being, despite numerous headwinds facing consumers who continue to spend, regardless, actually, likely with a lot of credit card debt, by the way, which continues to just kind of break record highs. It's been soaring for a long time now. As a separate report also came out from Bank of America that showed that we're seeing other challenges too, like the widest wage gap in over a decade, with higher income families seeing higher pay growth above 5%, while the rest of the country is much lower at only around 1 and 2% for low and middle class families, respectively. So, while the stock market is rallying on hope for now, I would argue that the average consumer is still feeling a lot of pressure, which will either get better or worse depending on whether we're able to, finally get some peace deals done in the Middle East, or if that's only going to escalate even further and cause even more damage, unfortunately. But, time will tell. But for now, let's move over to some individual stock news for the week. where among all the macro craziness going on, we did also have some pretty giant moves across the market that we should cover. And first up here, we should definitely start with the chip sector first because we saw a giant bounce back this week for many popular memory names, including SanDisk, who soared a gigantic 32% in the past 5 days, Micron, who climbed over 23%, Western Digital rose over 20%, Texas Instruments climbed over 11%, and even TSMC finished the week strong, up over 8% too. So what's going on here? Well, I didn't notice anything too company specific, although I will cover some unrelated stuff with a few other chip stocks in a second, like with Intel and Broadcom. But for these memory names, I think it was more of just kind of a broader relief rally that initially started towards the end of last week, as you might recall, that is now carried over into this week too. And it's driven by a mixture, I would say, of not just the ceasefire optimism, but also the complete kind of 180 that we've seen in sentiment regarding that new Google technology that we talked about last week too, called TurboQuant. And just to kind of refresh your memory on that, this is the new compression algorithm that Google developed to shrink the amount of memory that is needed for running AI models, which initially spooked investors into thinking that it would destroy demand for memory chips. But analysts later pointed out that it might actually raise demand even further because of the increased efficiency, allowing for even more workloads to be performed, thus accelerating AI adoption even further and just ultimately raising chip usage even more. On top of that, though, one chip company that did have some specific news, business specific news this week was Samsung, who posted preliminary guidance showing a record quarterly profit that jumped nearly eightfold year over year on increased demand from AI, which seems to confirm that the AI chip boom is nowhere near over. Speaking of which, the demand is so high, in fact, that a Bernstein analyst just raised his price target on SanDisk up to now 1250, which he even claimed is a conservative estimate, and that in a quote blue sky scenario, he thinks the stock could even hit $3,000 if NAND prices keep skyrocketing like they did in March. Now, just to give you guys some context here, SanDisk currently trades much lower than that in the $800 range and is already up over 2,000% since going public only about a year ago. How crazy is that? So yeah, if it keeps going up here even more like this analyst is predicting, that would just be crazy gains for the stock and anybody that owns it. I don't personally have SanDisk stock. I wish I did. But investors have been seeing huge returns from it. Anyway, it's been a huge turnaround for really all companies involved here in the memory chip space that are now reporting, some of their best profit numbers ever. Although some analysts are cautioning, I will note that if the war gets dragged on further and ends up disrupting supply chains for vital materials like helium, well, these record profits could eventually take a hit. So, it's something that we'll have to keep a close eye on. Moving on, though, let's talk about Apple, who had a very volatile week, initially dropping by almost 6% at one point after a report from Nikkei Asia claimed that the company is facing major engineering challenges with their highly anticipated folding phone that may even need to be delayed past the expected September window for the new iPhone. As Nikkei reports that current solutions aren't meeting Apple's standards for durability or screen quality, and thus the company is having to pivot unexpectedly. However, Bloomberg did later counter the report, saying that the iPhone Fold is still, quote, on track for the September debut. But either way, it highlights just how much pressure Apple is likely under right now to innovate with their upcoming products, as competitors like Samsung, Google, and a number of Chinese alternatives have been offering foldable phones for years now, while Apple continues to release seemingly, kind of the same product every year. Although they are often high quality, I will give them that, but it's just kind of more of the same every, year after year. Now, to give you an idea of what the stakes are for Apple, though, iPhones drive over half of the company's $143 billion quarterly revenue. And if they can't get the engineering right before, I would say like around summertime, I would bet that they do miss the 2026 window entirely for the iPhone Fold, which surprisingly has nothing to do with a chip shortage like we've seen many other companies have to deal with and struggle with. But Nikkei is saying that this is purely a design and durability issue that they'll need to address before launch. Now, considering that companies like Samsung and Huawei have had really like a 7-year head start on Apple in this area, well, I think that Apple will be taking the quality issue very seriously here, because releasing a first generation foldable that ends up cracking or attracting a ton of bad press with any kind of issues with the hinge, the display, anything like that, well, it could be a disaster for the company's 50th anniversary this year, which I would expect to drag the stock down a lot. Are you guys planning on buying the new foldable phone though? I initially had high hopes for it as an Apple shareholder myself, but after seeing estimates that it could cost around like $2,400, I just can't imagine it selling very well at those levels, especially in this kind of macro economy that we're in right now. Now, I do have a foldable myself, the OnePlus Open. It's actually right here. Oops, sorry about that. Yeah, so I do have a foldable phone myself that I do very much like. But I got this one with a few different discounts, and I ended up paying, I think, like around $1,000 when all the discounts were applied, which were pretty easy to get, by the way. It wasn't like anything crazy. I didn't have to trade in like a super expensive phone or anything. There was just like sales and different discounts, and I ended up getting it for like $1,000, and it was around the time that it released too. So I've already had it for a pretty long time. But yeah, that's kind of the limits of what I'd be willing to spend for a phone. I think phones are getting crazy expensive. You guys can let me know how you feel about them down below in the comments. But I can't believe, if Apple tries to sell a foldable iPhone north of $2,000, I mean, that is getting kind of like to crazy levels. I mean, for that price, you could get such a strong computer. Like you could get one of the best computers out there with like the highest specs, some of the highest specs for $2,400. That's crazy high. Anyway, next up though, we got a huge partnership announcement between Intel, who skyrocketed over 30% this week. What a rally they've been going through, and Tesla, who actually fell another 5% this week too. Complete opposite. Tesla has been really struggling more so lately. Now, the big news here, though, has to do with Intel officially coming on board as a major partner for Elon Musk's Terafab project. Will be a massive $25 billion chip production facility in Austin, Texas, designed to build custom semiconductors for SpaceX, Tesla, and xAI. Now, for Intel, though, this is a large win, I would say, and a big vote of confidence in their foundry business, which has been struggling to find third-party customers. And for Musk, I would say that bringing in Intel's manufacturing experience does significantly de-risk their project, which I think bodes well for them long-term too. It's a strategic move here to increase chip production on US soil while relying a bit less heavily on TSMC out in Taiwan, which is of course near China. Now, I also talked about all of that in previous videos for why I was buying Intel stock myself on the big dip. I actually bought at some of the lowest lows. I saw the stock crashing, and I really wanted to buy in because of how important I saw Intel's foundry business, being able to make chips for the West, how important that is for the West. And I'm not saying this to brag, by the way, because with Intel stock, who freaking knows where that's going to go, kind of near to medium term. It's one of the most volatile stocks out there. But, so far, I think I have been mostly proven right about how much the West is dependent on Intel's chip making business, as it's now driving the stock up, soaring from those lows, and it's just up a huge amount, which I am happy to see again as a shareholder. Now, additionally, Intel has been expanding too, though, into Google Cloud with their Xeon chips and custom IPUs, all of which is boding well for Intel's long-term recovery. Let me know if you guys own any Intel stock yourselves, though, and how you feel about these new developments. I do find them pretty interesting. Speaking of big chip companies, though, we also had some big moves being made by Broadcom, ticker symbol AVGO, who climbed over 16% after announcing expanded deals with also Google, but also Anthropic as well. And here it was basically Broadcom now. They're going to be helping Google produce future versions of their AI chips, while Anthropic is securing a massive 3.5 gigawatts of computing capacity for them too, utilizing these new chips. Mizuho analysts estimate that this could bring in as much as $21 billion in AI revenue for Broadcom this year alone, which is absolutely massive. And it's just another sign of really how on fire Broadcom has been during the entire AI revolution, where the infrastructure layer of AI, I would say, really does seem to be attracting most of the big money out there. And because Broadcom specializes in custom chips, a lot of these AI model companies like Anthropic, like OpenAI, they're really looking to, at least in some ways, move away a bit from standard GPUs over into custom chips. And many times that Broadcom is one of the best at supplying. So it should mean even more growth for the company, which the CEO, Hock Tan, he noted that demand from Anthropic alone is expected to surge 3 times larger by next year. Anthropic, by the way, is seeing their own explosive growth, and annualized revenues are exploding. They exploded from 9 billion up to more than 30 billion in just the past few months. So Anthropic is on fire too. It's pretty crazy stuff that we're witnessing here. Finally, though, we have to talk a little bit about Meta, who finished the week up over 11% too. And here the big catalyst was the launch of their brand new AI model called Muse Spark. This is coming out of their new Meta Superintelligence Labs, which Meta has been investing heavily in through their giant AI overhaul. It actually costed them more than $14 billion just to bring over Scale AI's Alex Wang and some of his top engineers and researchers to lead the new elite AI unit. And that part of that whole kind of restructuring that was going on there, which is said to have already created Meta's most powerful model yet, designed to even beat ChatGPT and Gemini in areas of image and video processing, which are super important, of course, for advertisers, where Meta makes the vast majority of their revenue on their super popular social media platforms like Instagram, Facebook, and WhatsApp. Together, of course, host billions of daily users. And after burning billions of dollars on the metaverse and their Reality Labs division, well, investors do seem to be happy about Zuck's pivot now so hard into a high performance AI stack that can actually drive meaningful revenue growth by integrating heavily into Instagram and Facebook ads, where the new model is set to improve accuracy and efficiency, thus driving up more advertiser demand onto their platforms. But Muse Spark will be just the starting point, really, as the company has even larger models in development too that we should be hearing more about in the coming year. On top of all of that, though, it was also revealed that apart from the more than $100 billion in CapEx that Meta will be spending this year on AI infrastructure, well, the company also announced a giant new deal. I think this was an expansion deal, but it was with CoreWeave, and it's valued at around $21 billion through 2032 to secure even more AI cloud capacity. And so it's clear that Zuck is just, kind of willing to spend whatever it takes here to catch up to the competition. And as a shareholder, I do welcome the moves here, because I feel that, if anyone is profitable enough to make these giant investments, it definitely would be Meta, and they got to spend the money somewhere. So it may as well go towards AI to drive more meaningful growth for them long term. So I don't mind it at all. Anyway, that's going to do it for this week's update. Let me know if you own any of the stocks that we discussed, or what your thoughts are on everything else going on in the market and the world at large. But either way, I hope that you're all doing well out there and staying safe. I'm praying for all of you. I'm praying for peace in the world. I really hope that we can get to that point. But thank you for your support. Thank you for stopping by. And I will catch all of you in the next video. All right. Take care, my friends. Bye-bye.